press release, a new breakthrough in game theory, White Christ, the iterated prisoner's dilemma strategy that may have saved humanity, surpasses all gold standard rivals. In a series of groundbreaking tournaments conducted on Google Colab, I put my newly developed iterated prisoner's dilemma strategy, White Christ, to the test in a series of challenging tournaments. Its unique principles, detailed later in this message, enabled it to achieve remarkable results. Named in homage to the man whom Oscar Wilde once called White Christ. This strategy has demonstrated a remarkable balance of cooperation, forgiveness, and adaptability. Recently, I tested the new White Christ strategy against all the contenders from Axelrod's famous first tournament, a landmark event in the study of the iterated prisoner's dilemma. White Christ proved to be far superior, even when offering its opponents an astonishingly large initial advantage. The results seemed almost unbelievable, but they are true. To ensure transparency and allow for easy verification, I released the code, making it accessible to anyone with a smartphone and an internet connection. By following my simple step-by-step guide, anyone can verify these findings for themselves. Google Colab is free to use. The code for this original series, where White Christ faced Axelrod's first tournament strategies including tit for tat, can be found here. I have reached out to major media outlets and leading scientists worldwide with this groundbreaking discovery, yet I am still awaiting an appropriate response. For those interested in the original tournament series, you can view the full results here. Axelrod's first tournament, with its renowned winner tit for tat, took place several decades ago, marking a major milestone in the study of cooperation and strategic behavior. Since then, the field of game theory has evolved significantly, with newer, more sophisticated strategies emerging to address complex challenges like noise, offering a closer reflection of real-world conditions. To truly challenge White Christ, I set it against two of the most highly regarded strategies in the field of game theory, Generous Tit for Tat GTFT and Pavlov, also known as Win-Stay-Lose-Shift or WSLS. Both praised by Robert Sapolsky, a renowned scholar in biology, neuroscience and anthropology at Stanford University. Sapolsky has highlighted the strengths of GTFT and WSLS as models for cooperation in real-life scenarios where errors, noise occur. GTFT improves upon the classic tit-for-tat by offering a chance to forgive defections, which helps prevent the downward spirals of retaliation that can occur when errors lead to unintended defections. Widely considered the gold standard for handling noisy conditions, GTFT's fixed forgiveness probability, often set at 1/3, is optimal for Axelrod's original payout matrix. It balances maintaining cooperation while avoiding vulnerability to exploitation. WSLS, on the other hand, adapts its behavior based on outcomes, alternating between cooperation and defection depending on past interactions. Together, these strategies excel in scenarios where mistakes can happen, making them ideal opponents for testing White Christ's resilience. Each tournament series began with White Christ offering a single unconditional cooperation, a common gesture of trust in the iterated prisoner's dilemma. With each new tournament in the series, White Christ increased this initial cooperation by 1, gradually giving its opponents an ever larger advantage. The aim was to discover how much of a head start White Christ could offer while still remaining the overall victor. What makes this study particularly noteworthy is the challenging conditions. With a noise level of 10%, there was a 10% chance that any intended cooperation would mistakenly turn into a defection, simulating real-world execution errors. The program successfully completed 51 full iterations of this tournament series before encountering a technical limitation. Buffer data was truncated after reaching the output size limit. Nevertheless, the data up to this point revealed a striking outcome. White Christ managed to maintain an average of 28.25 initial unconditional cooperations before adapting its behavior to remain competitive. Given the standard structure of 200 rounds per tournament, this means that, on average, White Christ spent more than the first eighth of each tournament blindly doing whatever was most beneficial for each opponent, cooperating, even when being exploited. This result is significant. Widely considered the gold standard for handling noise, GTFT and WSLS met a resilient opponent in White Christ. Despite granting its opponents substantial early advantages, White Christ maintained its winning edge, an extraordinary feat under these challenging conditions. Moreover, WSLS's opportunistic nature added an intriguing dynamic to these tests. While WSLS generally tends to cooperate when it accidentally defects due to noise and finds that this mistake results in a points gain, it continues with this exploitative behavior. The fact that White Christ maintained its lead against such an opponent, even while offering extensive initial cooperation, underscores the robustness and versatility of this new strategy. Unlike previous tests, where I refrained from sharing the code due to the inclusion of the ethically questionable dark triad strategy, a strategy I developed myself but have no intention of promoting, I am now prepared to release the code for this repeated series of tournaments. This decision is based on the fact that this code does not contain any strategies that operate on fundamentally deceptive principles. While WSLs can adapt harshly to perceived advantages, it does so within the bounds of strategic adaptability. I have made the code available for those who wish to explore these findings further. Anyone with basic Python skills can run their own versions of the tournaments. But even complete beginners can still verify my findings by following my simple step-by-step guide. All you need is a smartphone and access to Google Colab, where you can run the code directly inside a notebook for free. The code and all necessary libraries run on Google servers, while you view the results in real time on your screen. Of course, for those wishing to modify the code or adjust parameters, some familiarity with Python would be helpful. Code White Christ versus GTFT versus WSLs. Google Colab. colab.research.google.com/dot to copy the code. Simply visit the provided link and click the copy icon below the code. Then open a new notebook in Google Colab. Click the icon labeled Newest Notebook in German. After that, a code input field automatically opens. Click into this small window. Hold your finger down and select Paste. Then, click on the paste icon Einfügen in German that appears to insert the copied code. Now, you're ready to run the tournament series by clicking on the symbol on the upper left of the code that looks like a circular play button. Understanding White Christ, a strategy rooted in adaptable forgiveness. White Christ builds upon principles of cooperation and forgiveness that have been central to strategic thinking for millennia, starting with the wisdom of Moses' eye for an eye, and further elevated by the teachings of Jesus, who advocated for greater forgiveness. Like Generous Tit for Tat GTFT, White Christ embodies a spirit of forgiveness, but it goes far beyond the one-size-fits-all approach that GTFT employs. In GTFT, a fixed probability of forgiveness, often set at 1/3, prevents the strategy from falling into cycles of retaliation when unintended defections occur due to noise. This probability is not chosen arbitrarily. It is optimal under the specific conditions of Axelrod's original payout matrix. According to a well-established formula in game theory, A forgiveness probability of 1/3 strikes a balance that allows GTFT to maintain cooperation without becoming overly vulnerable to exploitation. This makes GTFT a valuable tool in noisy scenarios where mistakes can trigger otherwise vicious retaliation loops. However, GTFT's one-size-fits-all approach means that the forgiveness rate doesn't adjust based on the individual behavior of its opponents. White-Christ, by contrast, offers a more nuanced form of forgiveness, tailored to the trustworthiness each opponent has demonstrated throughout their interactions. White-Christ emphasizes an opponent's recent behavior, placing greater weight on more recent actions through a logarithmic calculation. This allows the strategy to adapt more effectively to changes in an opponent's behavior, whether they are moving toward greater cooperation or turning more deceitful. Furthermore, White-Christ sets a specific threshold for trustworthiness. Once an opponent's weighted cooperation rate surpasses this threshold, forgiveness is guaranteed, unlike the probability-based forgiveness tied to a random number generator. This ensures that White-Christ is never perceived as acting arbitrarily. It maintains consistency and predictability in its actions, closely mirroring the real-world dynamics of building and maintaining trust. As with any strategy, noise can still lead to unintended defections, but this is a challenge that all players face. It's important to note that while I have only briefly tuned the parameters of White-Christ, focusing on a threshold and weight factor specific to Axelrod's original payout matrix, there is ample room for further refinement. Experts in game theory might find opportunities to fine-tune these parameters even more precisely. For me, the focus is on the principle, and already, White-Christ has proven itself to be extraordinarily effective in diverse and challenging scenarios. Perhaps the most striking real-world example of such a strategic mindset can be found in the story of Stanislav Petrov, the man who averted a global catastrophe in 1983. Faced with a false alarm indicating a nuclear strike, Petrov had to decide whether to retaliate according to standard protocol, a course of action that would have mirrored the strategy of tit for tat. Had Petrov followed this path, the retaliation would have been automatic, and with 100% certainty it would have triggered a full-scale nuclear war, wiping out much of humanity. Even if he had employed a more forgiving strategy like GTFT, 0.33, there would still have been a 67% chance that he would have initiated a catastrophic response. However, Petrov took a different approach. He considered the long history during which the United States had refrained from nuclear aggression against the Soviet Union, and he reasoned that if the Americans were truly initiating a nuclear strike, they would likely launch more than just a single missile. One isolated alert did not cross the threshold that would make him certain of lost trustworthiness. By prioritizing rationality over protocol, following an approach similar to White-Christ, Petrov chose not to launch a retaliatory strike. This decision, rooted in careful assessment rather than rigid adherence to rules, ultimately saved the world from nuclear annihilation. In essence, we owe our very existence to a decision that aligns closely with the principles of the White-Christ strategy. By valuing measured trust and reason over rigid retaliation, Petrov demonstrated how such strategic thinking can be the key to humanity's survival. Let us continue to explore how such strategies can inform our understanding of social behavior and hopefully help us to build a future rooted in mutual aid and well-being for all.